Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Govberg, and thanks for logging on. Today, we're looking at the Omega Museum Watch number 1, the Omega Museum Collection Pilot's Watch. You can see this 40.5mm historical tribute on our website, govbergwatches.com, and if you enjoy these videos, please download our app, Govberg On Time, for the latest news, views, and reviews of luxury watches. Now, on my wrist, 6 1/3 inches, 16 centimeters in circumference, this true-to-history 40.5mm watch has surprisingly modern presence. Now, part of that is in the span of the case. In the 1930s, 40.5mm was considered downright huge, but it's also part and parcel to the span of the lugs. Now, they trace the arc of the wrist quite nicely, but for such a vintage piece, the total span of 51.5mm is quite impressive. It does have a cambered bend to it, though, so it traces the arc of the wrist very nicely. Now, the watch is quite slim. Including the beautifully domed sapphire crystal, the watch is only 11.8mm thick, so this is an easy one to wear with formal attire if you do have to wear a tighter dress cuff or sleeve. And because so much of the loft of the case is taken up by the plexiglass look of this domed sapphire, it really is quite easy to get a cuff or a sleeve started up and over the side of this case. Now, all elements of the fit, finish, and aesthetic are historically inspired, but modern luxury standards do apply here. That means the case, the lugs, the dial, and of course the strap. Now, it's a historically correct calfskin, as we often see paired with aviators' watches, but it's beautifully made and heavily bolstered as it approaches the lug. You can see how the taper of the strap swells as it approaches the lug to allow a more gradual visual transition, but in true vintage fashion, the spring bars themselves are straight. They do show a little bit of daylight between the case flank and the end of the strap, but the good news is with that broad lug span, it doesn't constrain the strap at all. You can bend it down easily around the flow of your wrist if you have a smaller wrist. Now, you can also see that Omega includes a beautiful polished stainless steel pin buckle, easily adjustable, also historically appropriate. On the underside, a beautiful calfskin, very supple against the wrist. Now, this was the first of the Omega Museum Collection watches. The Pilot's Watch 1938, and the Omega Museum Collection was an initiative in the early 2000s, starting in 2001 with this limited edition of 4,938 pieces, to take watches that were over 50 years old in the Omega Museum and begin to reissue them in limited numbers to collectors who wanted a wearable modern variant that they could actually use on a daily basis. And the Pilot's Watch that you see here led the line. Now, it's a unique combination of vintage style and modern build quality. It does have an automatic movement inside, which the original certainly did not, but one of the most distinctive elements of the watch is one you could miss on the first pass, and that is the bidirectional rotating semi-internal bezel. Now, it's inspired by the Weems or hour angle watches of the 1930s, which were used in conjunction with celestial navigation technique, so it is really a very early navigator's tool in the Pilot Watch genre. Now, a beautiful tritone is used. You can see silver, you can see black, and you can see shocks of red. So it's quite colorful and attractive. It's almost a little bit festive. So while it is a utilitarian, historically inspired piece, it is nevertheless beautiful, fun-loving, and in many respects, a little bit more, perhaps, outgoing, a little bit more extrovert, a little bit more, shall we say, celebratory in spirit than a conventional utility or professional style watch. And that's just compounded by the beautifully loomed Arabic numerals. Arabic numerals are in general a treatment seen on Pilot's watches, and on very old Pilot's watches they're often paired with beautiful cathedral hands. Now, because this watch does use superluminova, it still glows beautifully at night. I actually have too much ambient light in the room to show you what I mean, but rest assured, unlike those true vintage pieces which have essentially dulled to a dark or very faint glow, this one is downright torch-like at night. Now, it features a beautifully sunken subdial and a sector minute and hour track, which is a gorgeous treatment that is historically correct. You may wonder why there is a Roman numeral silver dial version of this watch floating around, and that's because Omega issued a numbered, not limited, but numbered edition of this watch for the Japanese market only. This one is a little bit more true to the watch in the museum. The other one is a little bit more imaginative in character and unlimited in number. Now, inside is an Omega chronometer caliber 2200. It's a 23 jewel automatic. It's based on the caliber 1120, which we know from the Omega Seamaster 300s. The Seamaster Professional 300 meter, or the Bond watch, essentially lends its heart to this pilot's watch recreation. So all of the underlying robustness, the thin profile, and of course the hacking seconds of that base caliber carries over here. Now, although it does not say chronometer anywhere on the watch, the paperwork included with the watch does include a chronometer certification, so it has that degree of refinement. And of course, if you want to synchronize to a known accurate reference time, the better for precise celestial navigation. You can pull the crown, you can hack the balance, and stop the seconds hand. This is the first of a long and distinguished line. These are highly sought watches. Even though 4,938 pieces may seem like a lot, I have to say collectors don't let them go, and this is the first one that I've had the pleasure to encounter at either Govberg or Watch You Want. You can see this Omega Museum Collection #1 1938 Pilot's Watch on our website, govbergwatches.com.